Hare. He's in his own world, oblivious. Is that your middle name? I think it's your middle name. So there are some devotees with us that haven't been here for the previous sessions, and I don't want to redo everything. We're hitting the home stretch of Madhurya Kadambini. The final 3 chapters, asakti, bhava, and prema, are preceded by the earlier stages. And this chart that's blown up here, this nice poster, if you didn't receive one, you can receive one. It's a digital copy, and then you can go over it when you want to go over it. It's intended to show from the seed of bhakti, shraddha, then the different stages as the bhakti creeper grows and grows through its different stages. And then asakti is where the buds start to appear. Then the buds open, they become flowers, and the flowers open and become full-blown, mature fruit of the bhakti creeper. And there are these first 2 leaves down at the bottom and so forth and so on. Those are important first 2 leaves because we'll see them, we'll refer to them, I think, this evening, not tomorrow evening. The first 2 are the initial stages, kleshagni and shubhada. Klesha means suffering or misery, and it's bhakti has the power to reduce or eliminate, and then bring in auspiciousness, shubhada, kleshagni shubhada. And we're going to hear now for the higher stages, the bhava and prema stage. There's some other 2 special terms for each of them. And we're at this stage that's just before that. So I don't know if it's a good idea to retell everything as a preamble, because those of you that joined us from Seattle, you know all these terminologies anyways. So immediately preceding the asakti stage was the stage of Ruchi, or taste. And the taste, we heard, it propels on its own strength. Because before Ruchi comes, where the stage of bhakti is steady, from unsteady to steady, and which means, for the most part, nashta prayeshu abhadreshu. The abhadras are, for the most part, prayeshu, almost completely gone. That means there's some residual influences of those unwanted things, but bhakti is so strong that they don't act, at least for the most part they don't act, unless one, of course, slackens in bhakti, and then they can do their thing again because they're still there. But as long as bhakti remains in full force, then they won't act. So that's the nishtha, and then the golden medallion shines forth and brilliantly, etc., this nice poetic language of Ruchi. And we heard that another metaphor, that Ruchi is like a dance, and there's the dance instructor of the dance. The dance instructor is the bhava and prema stage. But even before we get to bhava and prema, there's dancing. and a stage of purity, of spontaneity in devotion, and purity such that Krishna makes sudden appearances sometimes, and then sudden disappearances, and so forth. We heard all those nice things. So now we're beginning the sixth chapter. Sixth chapter is asakti, enchantment of the heart. So the language of Madhurya Kadambini, there's different showers of nectar. So this is the sixth, and then seventh, and then eighth, and then that's the end of the book. Two, just stepping back, overview things. The entire book is just an expansion or elaboration on a series of verses from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that begins Adau Shraddha Tatak Sadhu Sangha, etc., describing the 9 stages of bhakti. That's Rupa Goswami's writing, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, of course, is the teachings given to Rupa Goswami by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are but the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam, and so there's parallels within Srimad Bhagavatam for all of these stages, mainly found in the earlier parts of Canto 1, Chapter 2. We've been discussing that. So, the asakti stage is very high. Attachment or enchantment of the heart to the object, Krishna. So here's the language of Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur. Asakti signifies that the flower and the fruit of ecstasy hasn't happened yet, bhava, and prema are going to soon appear. It's the Haribol before they come on stage. Here's the chart that is up on the top here. And what's on the screen, the asakti is towards the bottom of the screen as we see little buds. And then the buds turn into flowers, and then the flowers turn into full-blown flowers with petals and so forth. And those petals, we won't do that now. The petals indicate the different primary rasas. So we're going to hear something about that tomorrow. And just prior to prema is the bhava stage, and just prior to the bhava stage is the asakti stage. And what it says on the chart, of course, the chart is just illustrating a graphic illustration of what's in Madhurya Kadambini. Attachment to Sri Krishna, the object of bhajan. So there's two. There's the bhajan, and then there's the object of bhajan. And there's an attachment in the asakti stage. We'll hear there's attachment to both. I mean, the essence is the object of bhajan. But the activities of bhajan, or bhajana kriya, that comes in an early stage, but now it's attachment to. Attachment to the extent that all other things just pale. They just become quite insignificant. And one isn't drawn towards them because one is strongly drawn towards and attached to the primary activities of bhakti, the bhajan activities of bhakti. So here's language taken from Madhurya Kadambini. I'm going to make some other references from other sources also. Asakti is attachment for Krishna, which develops when taste, so that's the Ruchi, following Ruchi is asakti, when taste for bhajan becomes extremely deep. And then his comment, the desire creeper, that's this chart or poster, the desire creeper of bhakti bears clusters of buds, heralding the swift appearance of the flowers of bhava and then the fruits of prema. It's poetry. I mentioned this yesterday. When we're at these higher stages, because it's not within our conventional experience, it's common when you're describing something that's not within your experience to say it's like this or like that. It's poetic imagery. The exclusive object of one's devotional activities is Krishna, and in his deity form, in his name, in his qualities, his pastimes, hearing topics of Krishna, seeing the form of Krishna, singing the name of Krishna. Vishwanath gives a little comparison, compare and contrast. How are Ruchi and asakti different? We discussed this yesterday. It's not like a total absolute separation. There's a bucket here. When this bucket here fills up, then you start to fill up the next bucket that's empty, and then the next bucket that's empty starts to fill up. And it's not like that. There's an overlap. It's a continuum. And just like the growth of a plant or a tree, it's just stages. Ruchi, the previous stage, has bhajan as its main object. Asakti has the object of bhajan as the main object. And one becomes focused more, not only the nice bhajan, we heard the elements of bhajan when they're very nice, the elements of bhajan where they're not necessarily very nice, but one moves towards the subject of the bhajan more than the bhajan. When I'm describing this, my thought goes to Prabhupada's instruction to our artists on what does Krishna look like. If you had to draw a painting, you draw? You like to draw? Yeah? If you had to draw a painting of Krishna, you might want to show to somebody that knows Krishna, which one looks most like Krishna? It's a natural question to ask, right? So our artists did like that with Prabhupada. They brought multiple, their own, some standard posters that have paintings of Krishna, and then Prabhupada's answer was they're all Krishna. So the devotees pointedly said, what about a child's drawing? It's just like a stick figure, and they show Krishna holding a flute, and he has a peacock feather, and Prabhupada's answer was, that's Krishna also. Now that's this stage of Ruchi where the elements are not, where the steadiness comes from, the happiness comes from the object. And the elements may be whatever the elements may be. Both Ruchi and asakti focus on both aspects. Here's the overlap. It's just that one is immature, the other is mature. The mature state, the focus is the object, but it's more focused on the bhajan of the object than the object. So they're both present in both stages. It's clear. And similarly, prior to asakti, there's an effort that one needs to make to focus on the activities of bhajan and to the distracting desires to draw one's attention away from them, the desires, and acting on those desires and so forth. Fixing. Nishtha cannot detect how and when the mind withdraws from spirit. That's nishtha stage, which is prior to Ruchi stage. When asakti is reached, asakti cannot detect how and when the mind withdraws from matter. Meaning, we're beginning the spontaneous stage. It's not fully spontaneous, but it's beginning. Absorption is spontaneous, no effort is needed. Well, that's in the asakti stage, but prior to asakti, there's some effort, and one can see, now I'm distracted, now I'm paying attention again, I make effort before the asakti. But when asakti is there, it's spontaneous, it moves on its own effort. So there's some text in Madhurya Kadambini to help one understand what's it like there. So here's the reflection of someone. Alas, I'm under very heavy siege from materialistic life. So how can I bring my heart to the sanctuary of devotional service to the Supreme Lord? Humility and appealing to the Supreme Lord to help. Such a sincere prayer helps release one's consciousness from its material bondage and attaches it or consciousness to the Supreme. It's just a sidebar or a feature of one who's moving from the earlier stages of Ruchi to the stage of asakti. For the devotee at the asakti stage, before he even attempts such a prayer, he finds himself already attached to the Lord. The idea is it moves on its own strength, and it's quite spontaneous. Attachment, or asakti, cleans the mirror of the heart. Chaita darpana marjanam. That's the effort, and then the asakti it's effortless. So that the Lord can, without warning, appear there in his reflection. Now, there's some very nice, I spent some time today looking through the commentary of our acharyas, and all of them point to this verse. This is Narada explaining to Vyasa about his previous life, during actually a previous day of Brahma. But he was associating with the Bhaktivedantas in the background. That's his mother, the maidservant, and these sages or sannyasis stayed with his mother and the little boy during the 4 months of the rainy season, and they allowed him to take the remnants of their food, and he felt something very special, not only their kindness, but the remnants for these great sages. And then they would sit and discuss topics of Krishna. This is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's translation of this celebrated verse. It's repeated over and over again. Jiva Goswami and this one, that one, Rupa Goswami, they all refer to this verse to indicate the asakti and bhava stages. The word rati at the bottom, it's a synonym, interchangeable synonym with bhava, or ecstasy. By the mercy of the sages who were chanting about the attractive pastimes of Krishna daily, I heard about Krishna in that place with asakti. So regularly, daily, from qualified persons, young boy, enthusiastically hearing, and he developed asakti. It was pretty quick, 4 months. How long we've been at Krishna consciousness. He was a very special boy. Hearing constantly, I then developed rati for Krishna. So that's the bhava stage in 4 months. There are a number of other references that just give a little, like a picture, a description of what this very elevated stage is like. There's different Sanskrit terminologies. Dridha, nishchaya. Nishchaya has the same verbal root as nishtha, nishchaya. Dridha nishchaya, without doubt. The asakti stage or attachment is sometimes also identified as Dhrita Nishchaya. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur uses another Sanskrit term, Svecha Purvika. That means at any time, at any place, in the asakti stage, without making any effort, uninterrupted meditation, concentration on the pastimes of Krishna. And he goes on to describe it's not just Krishna's form, all at the Krishna's abode, the details and details and details of the abode of Krishna, Vrindavan, and the river and the birds and the butterflies and the everything, the sounds and the affection that Krishna has for all the creatures in the Vrindavan forest and the affection they have for him. So it's just a meditation that very naturally appears in the mind of the person at this stage, the stage of asakti. Now here's a comparison going through Nishtha, Ruchi, and asakti. Nishtha means continuous bhakti without confusion. That's the language of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in commentary. Ruchi means desire for the Lord but without direction by the intellect. Asakti means desire which is natural and spontaneous without intellectual direction. So Ruchi, the intelligence directs the mind. In the asakti, the intelligence can take a break. Because the mind just goes. The mind just goes because the heart has a natural attraction. Where the heart goes, the mind goes. And the intelligence, of course, doesn't go to sleep, but it's alert to the object. Another way of, so nishtha, this is just a very quick, simple flow. Nishtha, Ruchi, asakti. Another way of saying thing. In the stage of asakti, one experiences spontaneous attraction. Some of you, if you start to read this literature, you'll come across Sanskrit terms that now they're kind of unfamiliar, but you'll hear them again and again. You start to understand what they mean just by hearing them again and again. Svarasaki, spontaneous attraction. In that spontaneous attraction, svarasaki can indicate one's own heart attraction for Krishna, and it can also indicate Krishna suddenly appears. Svarasaki. And then he may stay, or he may just, as swiftly as he appeared, disappear from the heart. And it's Krishna. It's not TV. It's Krishna. It's transcendental television, but it's both for the performance of bhajan and for the object, independent of intellectual resolve. So it's spontaneous. The purity stage has been so successful, and so purity doesn't come quickly. Purity generally doesn't come quickly. It's with much, much effort of trying to keep everything inside and outside very, very clean. So outside by following of dharma, and inside by the activities of bhakti, primarily hearing and chanting, and the other activities of bhakti. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, the section where Lord Chaitanya is instructing Sanatana Goswami, there's a nice verse that also speaks of this attachment. Instead of using the word asakti, it uses the word raga. And it's describing the spontaneous stage again. when one becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead according to one's natural inclination to love him, so now we're on the spiritual platform already, and is fully absorbed in thoughts of the Lord, that state is called transcendental attachment. Tat Mayi. So there's technical terms and there's similarities and there's some subtle differences, but it's still speaking of the asakti stage. Attachment to the object, the personality of Godhead. And there's some feelings of love for the object, for the personality of Godhead. And fully absorbed in thoughts of the object. That's this asakti stage, or transcendental attachment. And devotional service according to that attachment is called ragatmika, or spontaneous devotional service. So the terminologies move around a little bit. That's okay. The main purpose of what I wanted to do this evening is focus on what does asakti mean anyways, and what are its characteristics. To help the reader, this is some principles to help the reader. Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, in his commentary in Madhurya Kadambini, gives a scenario, a flow of events in a day of someone who's at this stage of asakti. What does it look like? So here we go. I'm just going to read. Early in the morning, one says, "Dear sir," coming from somewhere, with the divine Shalagram Shila hanging from your neck in a handsome box, "I see that your tongue is in a constant flurry of relishing the nectar of Sri Krishna's names, as you recite them very softly. This sight encourages me, who am so fortunate, to ask you something. Please tell me, what holy places have you visited in your wanderings? What things have you seen, and what realization of the Supreme Lord have you had that have made you able to perfect your own life and those of others?" Spending a few minutes drinking the nectar of the words spoken in response, he then goes somewhere else and says, "Dear sir, with the exceptional opulence of these attractive books arranged in your room, I can deduce that you are a learned man. So please explain to me this one verse in the 10th canto and bring the sparrow of my ears back to life by raining down the nectar of its purport." Of course, this is very gracious language. Most people don't speak like this. His body becomes covered with horripilation by hearing this explanation, and then he goes somewhere else where he says, "This very moment my life will become successful because I see this assembly, which can all at once counteract everything bad I have ever done." Thus, falling to the ground like a stick, he shows signs of respect and humility. Greeted with honor in a transcendently affectionate way by the crest jewel of the assembly, the greatly learned pure devotee of the Lord, he sits down nearby that leader of the assembly, his body shrinking in humility, and says, "Dear sir, O most eminent of physicians, who can cure the grave disease of material existence, present in all living beings of the three worlds, please feel my pulse and determine the disease of me, this lowly and wretched person. Please prescribe my diet and medicine. Please use some potent tonic to effect the strong, healthy condition I desire." Thus pleading with tears in his eyes, he is then pleased by the nectar flowing from that person's merciful glance and sweet words. He spends 5 or 6 days serving his feet and then moves on. spiritually enlivened, and eventually reaches a forest. One thing to the next thing, just is absorption, is spontaneous absorption, is the poetic way that Vishwanath Thakur, Chakravarti Thakur is describing. If, I think deer is spelled wrong, if I have actually received Krishna's merciful glance, then this black deer, looking at me from a distance, should make 3 or 4 steps toward me. If I haven't received it, he should turn his back to me. Thus, understanding even the indistinctive behavior of the deer, other animals, and birds as signs of Krishna's favor and displeasure, he comes to the outskirts of a village where some playing Brahmana boys seem to him to be Sanat Kumar and his brothers. He asks them, "Am I going to obtain the young son of the king of Vraja?" They reply to him with a childish broken syllable, "Ma," which he alternatively considers impossible to understand, or else obvious. Then, sitting once more in his house, he thinks, like a miserly merchant greedy for more and more wealth, "Where can I go? What can I do? By what means can all these things I want come into my hands?" He ponders thus with a languid face, sometimes going to sleep, sometimes standing up, sometimes sitting down. When his family members ask him the cause of this behavior, he sometimes keeps quiet, like a dumb man, and sometimes says something evasive. His relatives think, now his intelligence has become covered over. The scholars of Vedanta think, he is just by nature a fool. The ritualists think, he has fallen. The non-devotees think, oh, he must have obtained some very rare thing. And the offenders think, he is an impostor. But whatever they think, he has no concern at all for honor or dishonor. This is how a devotee acts, who has fallen into the Ganga stream of attachment to the Supreme Lord. Now that's pretty extreme. I don't know if Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur personally behaved like this, but he's indicating at least a directional principle that anything and everything doesn't matter. There's one thing, the one focus, one central focus, the object, the personality of Godhead, and bhajan, the activities of hearing and chanting and remembering Him in relation to Him. So the center is the center, and the activities are together with what's at the center. Interesting description, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's description of that asakti stage. There's a reference that's from Narada Bhakti Sutra. Narada Bhakti Sutra number 78 reads, 11 forms of attachment. So this is elaborating further on the asakti stage. Attachment to the Lord's glorious qualities, attachment to His beauty, attachment to worshiping Him, remembering Him, serving Him, reciprocating as a friend, caring as a parent, dealing with Him as a lover. Sounds like, the stages of bhakti. To surrendering one's whole self to Him, being absorbed in thought of Him, experiencing separation from Him. This last is the supreme attachment. So these ways of engaging in attachment to the Supreme Lord, they're standard, different texts, all refer to the same principles. Other aspects of asakti. This is taken from that chart. Spiritualization of I and mine. And, aham, And mamata, we'll be hearing this term mamata again. We've heard it before, earlier. And spiritualization of eye and mind becomes complete in the asakti stage. The material aspect, this is from that chart, just a trace or gandha, a fragrance. Meditation becomes very deep. Two examples are given, and one example is the position of Queen Kunti. She's also praying for this asakti stage where her attraction isn't diverted to anyone else. Oh, Lord of Madhu, as the Ganges forever flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be drawn constantly unto you without being diverted to anyone else. Now she has that already. She's praying as if she doesn't have that already, but it's a stage. It's an indication of the stage of attachment. So different relationships, but the object is the same. So the experience of that attachment for the object is going to vary from person to person according to various bhavas or sthayi bhavas or steady ecstasies that one has in relation to the object, in relation to Krishna. So obviously, Kunti's is what Kunti's is, Yashoda's is what Yashoda's is, etc., etc. Different persons have different emotions, but the object, the stage of, or the characteristic of being attached, well, there isn't some other object, and it's quite spontaneous. It's a very good example. The Ganges flows downstream. All rivers flow downstream. Ganges flows downstream. And as the water of a river flows downstream, let my mind go like the Ganges water, flowing towards you without being diverted to anyone else. It's a very beautiful painting. I like this painting. So she has privileges. Krishna's leaving Hastinapur. And there's this big, look at behind her, there's this big assembly of people up on the balcony and, as far as the eye can see. But she's right next to Krishna's chariot, and she's speaking to him personally. And he's giving undivided attention to her because of her love for him. He's giving undivided attention to her. And in other words, he is hearing her prayer. So he's certainly going to grant what she's asking. She already has it. There's another example, scriptural example. This is taken from Kapila Dev's teachings to Devahuti. Chapter 29 is speaking of pure devotional service. The manifestation of unadulterated devotional service is exhibited when one's mind is at once attracted to hearing the transcendental name and qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is residing in everyone's heart. So it's a characteristic of the mind being drawn spontaneously. There's a sound, and the mind wants to hear that sound and nothing but that sound. And when it hears the sound, the mind is drawn very strongly, spontaneously, at once brought to the personality of Godhead. Just as same as the water of the Ganges flows naturally down towards the ocean, such devotional ecstasy, uninterrupted by any material condition, flows towards the Supreme Lord. Now, these two references are given by our acharyas to help us understand from the Bhagavatam what does the stage of asakti look like, or one who is experiencing attachment, what's their behavior, external and internal. Almost done. There's a reference in Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu where he explains, because after asakti comes bhava, but he explains in detail, this is just an extract, without attaining asakti, bhava bhakti cannot be attained. Not an option. And then further, Jiva Goswami makes this comment about extraordinary attachment. Even though one executes sadhana bhakti with attachment, now a different Sanskrit word is used, asanga, until that time when one produces intense asakti in that bhakti, the Lord does not give bhava bhakti. That's Jiva Goswami's commentary on a verse that's from 5th Canto, Chapter 6. 5th Canto, Chapter 6 is Rishabhadev's teachings to his sons. And Sukadeva Goswami is narrating it to Maharaj Pariksit. And after that narration of the instructions of Rishabhadev, he's now commenting the stage of bhava bhakti, because the stage of bhava bhakti was achieved by one of his sons, Bharat Maharaj, achieved bhava bhakti. And then he's commenting it's rarely achieved. Because bhava bhakti is when not only attachment, but specifically Jiva Goswami is saying intense attachment in bhakti. Then, so the understanding is bhava bhakti is bestowed in these higher stages on the one hand, on the other hand. They're within and they're just awakened, and on the other hand, they're bestowed. Which is it? Or is it both? It's both. Something that's already innate, like within a seed, there's life. But the seed can just sit in a jar or in a bag or something for so much time. And then some action is needed to sprout the seed. So when the seed sprouts, it has its own life because there's life within the seed. That's how it sprouts. But there's things that, so there's a two-way street. There's something that we can do, but it's also something that's bestowed. I'll say it again another way, just try to make my point clear. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sajya Kabunoi Shravanadi Shuddha Chitte Karye Udoi, in the language of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Within the heart of every living entity, there's already Krishna Prema. Nitya Siddha, Krishna Prema, Sadhya. Sadhya is the goal. And then there's the means to reach the goal. Shravanadi, beginning with Shravana, etc. Shravanadi. Shuddha Chitte, Karaye Udoi. Something that we do is awaken that which is already there. But it's not just we do, it's not mechanical, in other words. Not a vending machine. Bhakti isn't mechanical. There are things that we should do, we do. And yet we may not be experiencing what we think it should be producing. We're not progressing as experiencing spiritual progress the way that we think we could and should. So it's bestowed. It's something that we do and something that's given to us both. It's a relationship. Fortunately. Loving relationship. And as much as we act in a loving relationship, there's reciprocation. And that reciprocation, it may take some time to fructify. We discussed this. Remember that example of a fruit tree. It may take some time for a fruit tree to bear fruit. But be patient, and fruit trees will bear fruit. Just do what you need to do to make sure. And then by nature's own arrangement, then the fruit tree will bear fruit. And that nature's arrangement, what's behind nature? The Supreme Lord. because nature doesn't work without the hand of the Supreme Lord. So, same with the bhakti principles. All the way through, there's something from our side, and there's something on the descending side. And this is a combination. And of chapter 6. And bhava and prema means like very high subject. I'll give you a warning. I've thought a lot about it, and I'm not going to try to give a nectar devotion class tomorrow, because there's lots of terminology of different categories of bhava and different categories of prema, and there's all these interesting names. And if you want to know what those interesting names are and what they mean and how does this fit with that, study Nectar Devotion, or study Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, or sign up for his Nectar Devotion class. Or you call it Nectar Devotion class or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu? Both. He's giving a class. If you want to learn all the terminology, don't expect it tomorrow. We'll hear it, just kind of like a snapshot, but there isn't going to be time, nor is it the right form, because it takes a lot to go through all of those terminologies. There's somebody in India that's listening to the recordings, the next day, and they're asking me questions like, outside of Gaudiya Vaishnavism and the appreciation of the different moods of love that exist amongst the followers of Lord Chaitanya or the residents of Braja, do the worshippers of other forms of the Lord also experience those other symptoms of? And I just wrote back, I don't know. I said, thank you. I read something in preparation for visiting, I mentioned this yesterday, national holiday in China. In preparation for the national holiday in China, I spent a little bit of time each day looking at what I'm going to be doing when I go to China. So there's a very nice little presentation where the teachings of Bhagavad Gita have, of course, they don't have, in China there's no Krishna, there's no Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the principles of life, or the culture of life, is quite similar. The value system and teachings to guide external and internal life of people. So there's one saying of Confucius, if you know, say. If you don't know, say. Don't say. And that's wisdom. Interesting. Okay. So on the topic of the stages of bhakti, specifically, as much as you can, focus questions on the asakti topic leading into bhava and prema. Very elevated topic. Any comments or questions?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. It's a curiosity question, sorry. The examples given for Kunti Maharani and Kapila Dev in the asakti category, is there a particular reason that these two prayers are specifically mentioned in asakti?
Yes, because they're exhibiting asakti-like symptoms. Attachment, where in a spontaneous way the mind is flowing to Krishna. They just happen to make similar comparison of the Ganges flowing downstream to the ocean. But it's a principle. It's an asakti principle. Now there's asakti, within bhava, asakti is there. It's just more mature. So there's higher, she's not only at the asakti stage, but that verse specifically is describing the attachment to the object.
So it's only the analogy that is talking about the asakti. It is not indicating Kunti Maharani and...
it's not saying that she's stuck at that stage.
Yeah, okay.
The higher stages include the lower stages. It's just exhibiting a feature of attachment. Those two references.
Okay, because today morning also we discussed about Bhishma Dev prayer, and he also prays like this, that
Yes.
let my mind be attracted towards you.
Yes. It's a principle.
Okay.
So, when you have $1 million, you have $10. You have $100. You have $1,000. It's included. So, in the higher stages, the lower stages are included. So, there may be some focus that goes to a feature of a lower stage, but they've gone beyond the lower stage. They're at a higher stage.
Okay.
These particular examples.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Can you elaborate on the Jiva Goswami's commentary in that 5th canto verse, that even though one executes sadhana bhakti with attachment until the time that one produces intense asakti?
Is this your question or an online question?
Mine.
Your question. Yes, I'll elaborate. I was thinking to cut and paste the verse itself, but the essence of the verse itself, the context is Rishabhadev's teachings to his sons, and that one of his sons achieved the stage of bhava. And then Sukadeva Goswami says to Maharaj Parikshit, it's very rare. It's so rare that it's not... Bhava is so rare that it's not just one has achieved attachment, asakti, and so then bhava comes. But Krishna awards bhava bhakti to one who has very intense attachment. It's just the commentary of Jiva Goswami is amplifying. It's extraordinary. Bhava is extraordinary. It's not ordinary. It's not boom, boom. It's extraordinary. Attachment, where everything else is left to the side, is extraordinary, and then extraordinary attachment. So it's bestowed by Krishna, not in a customary way or in a mechanical way. You do this and you get that, cause and effect kind of thing. It's a reciprocation, and it's rare. That's the liberation.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for your merciful association. Maharaj, from your yesterday's suggestion on chanting in the mood of telescope or like the lens, considering the holy name as the sunlight,
Okay.
and then concentrating. So I was thinking if you could elaborate on where should the focus be? Should it be on our ears or should it be on the holy name getting to our mind? Like where should be the focus of that attention?
1, 2, 3. Make the sound. Hear the sound. And then the third is the sound enters. This is Rupa Goswami, Padyabali. Vedanta Madhava. The sound enters the courtyard of the heart. So, in sequence, make the sound distinct. Audible, maybe soft, but audible, and distinct sound. And then hear the sound according to, I like this teaching of Bhakti Siddhanta. I'm moving so I can get eye contact. Hear with a spiritual ear. Not there's the material ear. The material ear can hear material sound. Material ear can hear spiritual sound, but it seems to be material. So with the spiritual ear means with a spiritual ear, with a spiritual conception of what the sound is, and you know that this thing on the side of the head is matter, and there's an apparatus, there's a technology by which sound is heard. There's an eardrum, there's a nervous system. When the eardrum vibrates, then the nervous system picks up, there's a sound, the sound goes to the mind, the intelligence assesses what's that sound. So there's a procedure of hearing sound. And beyond that procedure of hearing the sound, hear with the spiritual ear means there's a spiritual body that this thing is a covering of. They're connected for sure. But now on the conscious plane, they're not so much connected because we're covered by material conception, and so we stay with the material hearing instead of the spiritual hearing. I'm just drilling down on hear with a spiritual ear. But in response to your question, it starts with vibrating clearly and distinctly, hearing, and when you hear, something happens. When you're really hearing, something happens. What that something that happens, Rupa Goswami describes. The holy name enters the courtyard of the heart and dances. And when the holy name dances in the courtyard of the heart, the mind becomes stunned and the senses become inert. So back to your question. Where does the focus go? It's in sequence.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Yes, over here.
Maharaj, if somebody is at Ado Shraddha...
No, not so loud.
I'll not use the mic. So Maharaj, if somebody is at Ado Shraddha, is my understanding correct? If he somehow meets a devotee at Prema, this process can be very quick for him.
Yeah.
So ideally a devotee at Ado Shraddha should seek out for a devotee at Prema.
Yeah.
If he gets that, then it's very easy. The entire process becomes very easy.
But it's not you meet somebody that's on the ocean, on the standard of prema, and you hit the top floor elevator button. It's not like that. Not like that. Nice try. There's purification. There's purification required because of attachment.
Purification and practice.
Well, that's part of the purification. Abhyasa. We've been discussing that. He wasn't there for all the classes, but he knows. Anyone else in the back there? Yes. All the way in the back, microphone.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. So from asakti to bhava, for asakti, you mentioned intellect already steps aside.
Say there's the sound system isn't allowing your voice to be heard clearly.
So you mentioned, Maharaj, that for during asakti stage, in the asakti stage,
during the asakti stage,
intellect has no business.
People have no,
Intellect.
no, they have intellect. It's not that the intellect goes out for lunch and doesn't come back. It's that prior to the asakti stage, when one's intelligence directs the mind, directs the senses. That's sadhana. Necessary. And in the spontaneous stage, the direction by the intelligence isn't required, it's spontaneously happening.
It's spontaneous. Okay.
Because the heart being drawn, having become purified, the heart is drawn and the intelligence is enjoying the experience.
Right. And then to get to bhava stage, how does one increase their propensity?
How does one do what?
How does one increase the propensity for to be, more intense?
It's spontaneous. So the how do you get warm? Stand near a fire. You want to get really warm, stand closer. Don't move. You'll burn. So that's the how. It's a how to. It's the intensity of. We mentioned it yesterday, and the day before yesterday too. So the absorption becomes so complete. There isn't, it's squeaky clean. There isn't anything else. And that's how it becomes stronger, or more intense. I mean, here's a little very nice example. Krishna sent Uddhava to Vrindavan, right?
Yes.
And why did he send him to Vrindavan? There was an external, but there was an internal. He, Krishna, wanted his dear friend Uddhava to stand near the fire. Get the intensity revved up by associating. First he went to Nanda and Jasoda, and what he saw and experienced at the house of Nanda and Jasoda, he was astonished at their intensity, etc. So by it's a little bit his question, but it's different than his, because Uddhava is already super qualified. Super qualified. So by sadhu sangha, the same principle as in the beginning, Lord Chaitanya says the same to Sanatana Goswami in the Sanatana Shiksha portion of Madhya Lila. He describes this same sequence, and it begins with sadhu sangha, because through sadhu gives bhakti, and then through sadhu sangha continued, then bhakti grows through bhajana kriya, etc. Then he describes at the very elevated stages of bhakti, sadhu sangha is still imperative. It's not like now I don't need sadhu sangha anymore. But back to your question, how does it become more intense? Through sadhu sangha. But then my regard is not just, it has to be a superlative prema bhakti. If that opportunity is there, fantastic. And otherwise, let me understand all devotees of the Lord are very special amongst all the living entities. And they're to be deeply respected. And disrespect is a big problem. And guess what? It happens. Somehow. Because of, the coverings. We disrespect those that are dear to Krishna. Problem. So avoid the offense and seek the sadhu sangha. And that's how it becomes intensified. Reduce the offenses and increase the association. Quantitatively and qualitatively.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Paramakruna, you're just scratching, or? Okay. Something online. You want to toss the microphone up this way?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Please, can you explain if there is any difference between the experience of Krishna appearing in one's mind in Nishtha stage and in the stage of asakti?
In the stage of what? In the stage of asakti?
Nishtha.
Nishtha. This question is a little bit like the prior question, where it's a matter of maturity and a matter of intensity. That's the distinction. When there's purity, then the object, Krishna, can be better understood. What the object is and what your experience of the object is. It's just there's a greater maturity because there's greater purity. And during the prior stage, there may be, we already did discuss this, but there may be some effort, intelligence directing the mind towards Krishna effort. And in the asakti stage, there's no effort required. It's just, it happens. Krishna appears at his own free will. No effort required. Spontaneous. That's the distinction. Or less mature, more mature. We're done. Srila Prabhupada ki